I thought grief was the heaviest thing I'd ever carry. I was wrong. Power can be heavier, especially when it's in the hands of an HOA president who thinks rules matter more than people. The morning my lakefront house died, the lake was calm. Loons were still calling like nothing evil could happen there. Have you ever seen your childhood turned into dust? I have. They said it was about standards. Beige fences, matching mailboxes, identical smiles. But why did the demolition crew arrive before the hearing? Why did no one knock on my door? My name is Maxwell Cordell. 52, retired structural engineer, recent widower. And at 9:15 a.m. I was standing barefoot in my driveway while a bulldozer aimed its metal jaw at my past. The boathouse went first. Forest green paint I'd matched from my grandfather's photographs. The same door frame where Lillian and I carved M+L inside a crooked heart. 6 months of restoration, gone in 6 minutes. Tell me, how can $300 erase 60 years? Vivica Drummond recorded it all on her phone. She looked like she was filming a vacation, not a funeral. Champagne in a plastic flute, spray tin glowing in the sun. What kind of person celebrates demolition? I kept thinking about Dutch, my grandfather. He bought this land in 1963 when Mirror Lake was just woods and optimism. He built 4 homes with his own hands. Ours was the crown jewel. Stone fireplace he mortared himself. Windows facing the water like open eyes. Did his signature really chain me to their kingdom? The HOA was formed decades later by a developer who sold harmony like candy. Dutch, older and tired, joined without a fight. I inherited that decision, and apparently a mountain of penalties. No one told me fines could grow like cancer. That certified letter arrived the week I finished renovations. Purple ink, smiley face, tyrant handwriting. Color palette violation. Clear outstanding balance. But why did they treat me like an invader in my own home? I drove to headquarters to talk, not to battle. Spreadsheets were my language. Vivica's nails clicked like tiny hammers on a coffin. Payment plan, 18% interest, 5 years. More unstable math than any tower I designed. Have you ever been asked to pay for a neighbor's ego? 2 weeks later the lien sticker bloomed on my door in fluorescent orange. Visible from the road, visible from space. Gus told me about the Reagans, foreclosed over $900. Teacher salaries, broken dreams, renting far away now. If $900 can exile a family, what could $300 do? That night I tore through Dutch's workshop cabinet. Olive drab metal smelling like his cherry blend tobacco. Old receipts, ruler marks, integrity in pencil lines. And something else, something that changed the temperature of the room. What if I told you the HOA never owned what they thought they did? I realized Mirror Lake Estates was built on dirt Dutch never sold. Parcels tangled in county records like sleeping snakes. The lawyers missed it. Vivica missed it. And I was about to wake them all. Because demolition can go both ways. Dust can have memory. And an HOA horror story can become a revenge blueprint. But first, you need to understand how this fine print war really started. The real war didn't start with machines. It started with silence. Have you noticed how HOA conflicts always wear polite masks? Mirror Lake looked like a postcard the day after the lien sticker. Tourists would have called it paradise. To me it felt like a stage waiting for the next act. Why did neighbors suddenly avoid eye contact? I drove to county records in a hoodie, smelling of old cedar. The clerk printed maps that looked innocent, thin blue shoreline, neat squares. But buried lines told a different story. Did you know land can keep secrets longer than people? Dutch had sold houses, not the crown parcel beneath the road. Easements only, ownership still in the Cordell Trust. My name on deeds like a sleeping giant. Why had the developer lied to legacy owners? I called my probate lawyer, voice shaking. He flipped pages, coughing embarrassment through the speaker. Technically, you're not subject to foreclosure. Technically wasn't the word I wanted. But why did it taste so sweet anyway? HOA headquarters smelled worse the second visit. Chemical roses, nervous ambition. Vivica greeted me with that shark smile again. Clipboard tucked like a weapon. Have you ever watched confidence crack at the edges? I slid the new maps across her desk. Purple ink trembled in her hand this time. These parcels are interesting, she said. Interesting. The coward cousin of terrified. Why did she suddenly offer coffee? She quoted sections like scripture. Community harmony, investment protection, current standards. But why did none mention that dirt ownership matters more than binders? I offered to repaint the boathouse in temporary compliance. She insisted demolition must proceed until debt cleared. Proceed, another polite guillotine. Have you noticed how micro fines become bulldozers? That evening a neighbor texted me anonymously. Viva wants you gone, your house ruins the view. Bare words, no smiley face. Why did cruelty feel more honest than policy language? I started documenting everything for this HOA niche reality. Patent-level precision, timestamps, witness lists. Viewers think HOA boards are boring. But why are their meetings filmed like thrillers in my memory? Lillian's recipe cards sat on the counter while I built a legal tower. M+L heart glowing under workshop light in photographs. Therapy swing creaking in the wind. Why did every object become a soldier? I hired a land attorney named Rivera. Soft voice, steel vocabulary. He said one line that night I'll never forget. HOAs fear two things, bad PR and owners who read. Have you ever heard a truth sound like a starting pistol? Rivera discovered the Reagan foreclosure had procedural holes. 3 other families fined into submission. But why did no one fight back before me? Structural engineers see load paths in buildings. I began seeing load paths in power. Vivica was a beam carrying decades of unchecked ego. What happens when a beam meets resistance? I prepared a proposal to dissolve dues for legacy parcels. She scheduled a hearing 90 days out. Out, far enough to finish demolition. Why did she rush timelines like a thief? Then the demolition crew returned with a bigger dozer. They said the boathouse was unsafe now. Unsafe because they'd made it unsafe. Have you noticed how HOA horror stories rewrite cause and effect? I stood on the dock recording the loons while Rivera filed an injunction at midnight. The orange sticker still glowed on my door like a challenge coin. What if I told you that injunction was only phase 1? Because I wasn't just protecting a house. I was testing a system designed to break people slowly. And in this HOA niche tale, the next reveal would cost Vivica more than champagne. Rivera told me not to celebrate too early. Injunctions are umbrellas, Max, not bunkers. Have you ever lived under legal weather? I started noticing details I'd ignored in Mirror Lake Estates. Fresh pavement hiding old roots. Beige McMansions lined up like obedient teeth. But why did the road above my parcel feel suddenly alive? The first board hearing was scheduled for Harmony Theater. Vivica brought binders stacked like wedding cakes. Neighbors filled the room with cautious perfumes and folded arms. Have you noticed how HOA meetings hum like waiting rooms? I wore a suit this time, patent presentation navy. The kind investors used to trust. Lillian had picked it in 2016 for a celebration dinner. But why did I feel dressed for a trial instead? Vivica opened with a prayer to property values. She called demolition corrective action. Corrective, such a kind word for a violent verb. Have you ever heard your house described like a misbehaving child? I asked for the microphone, though legacy owners rarely spoke. My voice bounced off the low ceiling Dutch would have hated. I explained section holes, dirt ownership, procedural bruises. But why did the crowd look at me like I'd insulted gravity? Then Mr. Hale, treasurer, cleared his throat. Even if parcels differ, dues ensure uniform experience. Uniform experience, assembly line happiness. Have you noticed how HOAs dream in identicals? I projected photographs of the boathouse before the dozer kiss. Forest green glowing against the water. M+L heart safe in the door frame. A few people actually gasped. But why were they shocked by beauty in their own neighborhood? Vivica said colors were never personal. She said Dutch's era was charming but obsolete. Obsolete, the word engineers use for bridges about to fall. Have you noticed how boards treat memory like expired milk? After the hearing, a woman named Clara followed me outside. Her hands were shaking worse than mine. My father built our dock, too, she whispered. They fined us for rail height last year. But why did she speak like confession was illegal? Clara told me Vivica visited sick owners with compliance letters. Purple ink blessings, smiley face daggers. 3 families sold quietly. Have you noticed how HOA horror stories prefer darkness? That night I walked the road with Gus. He pointed at parcels the developer had marketed as HOA-owned commons. Turns out they were leased from the Dutch Trust for $1 a year. $1 single holding up their entire kingdom. But why did no one read those leases? I began drafting a counter-strike for this HOA niche battlefield. PR plan, legal plan, human plan. Rivera said we'd invite media only when timing was perfect. Perfect timing, another engineer phrase. Have you noticed how power hates daylight calculations? Lillian's garden books helped me breathe during those weeks. I planted tulips near the demolition scar, though Rivera warned not to alter the site. Alter, the opposite of corrective. But why did flowers feel like defiance? Vivica sent another letter raising the fine to $600 for continued non-compliance. Calculator clicking through the mailbox now. Have you noticed how micro cliffhangers arrive in envelopes? Rivera discovered something uglier. The HOA had taken a loan against the Commons parcel for a new gatehouse. Gatehouse already under construction. But why would a bank accept collateral they never owned? If that loan collapsed, every member would pay the debt. 47 families sipping their own champagne of ignorance. Have you noticed how systems boomerang? Rivera looked at me across the dock and asked, Max, are you ready to pull one thread and unravel the whole sweater? I told him yes. What I didn't know was that thread ran straight through Vivica's personal finances, too. And the next act in this HOA horror story wouldn't be polite at all. The bank thread kept me awake like a mosquito in July. One phone call between a lender and an HOA nightmare. Have you ever realized strangers might owe you an apology bigger than your driveway? Rivera arranged the meeting with Lake State Credit Union. Glass Tower downtown, nothing like Cedar honesty. The loan officer, Mr. Benton, poured coffee with nervous hands. Why did a banker look scared of a neighborhood association? He admitted the HOA president had signed as if the parcel were common property. Signed with authority she never possessed. Vivica Drummond cosplaying queen on borrowed dirt. Have you noticed how paperwork becomes costume jewelry? I showed Benton the trust deeds, easement limits, Dutch's pencil maps. The numbers on his screen turned pale. Pale like Gus's face when he first heard the dozer story. But why did the union never verify collateral paths? Rivera asked the micro question out loud. What happens when $2.4 million collateral legally equals zero? Zero, the cliff edge of finance. Have you noticed how bankers sweat without running? Benton said the loan could be called immediately. Called debt transferred to all members under joint liability. 47 polite families suddenly in boxer shorts like I'd been. Why did justice sound so contagious? Rivera recommended a pause before triggering it. Media strategy must land first in this HOA niche arena. He wanted daylight, not midnight strikes. Have you noticed how revenge prefers presentation decks? Meanwhile, gatehouse construction continued beside the road above my parcel. Steel beams rising like a middle finger. Clara texted photos of workers laughing with Viva watching again. But why did confidence return to her smile so fast? I organized a neighborhood picnic invitation, though I barely knew these people. Legacy owner hosting on Crown Dirt. Gus grilled burgers while loons judged us from the water. Have you noticed how communities remember food faster than kindness? At the picnic, Hale, the treasurer, actually shook my hand. But light diplomacy instead of champagne tyranny. Maybe the board rushed things, he muttered. Rushed things, the understatement of demolition. But why did he glance around before speaking? Clara introduced me to 3 other legacy owners who never joined the HOA. They'd received letters too, purple ink missionaries. But why were only joined properties targeted with machines? I started filming everything for a future YouTube expose. Competitor-style pacing in my own life now. Curiosity, revelation, new tension with every conversation. Have you noticed how a camera becomes backbone? Vivica sent a certified invitation to final compliance celebration hearing. She actually used the word celebration again. Again the daggers wore smiley faces. But why did she schedule it the same day the dozer rental renewed? Rivera discovered the HOA bylaws allowed emergency demolition only with president approval. Approval based on unsafe structure assessment. She'd commissioned herself. Have you noticed how tyrants hire mirrors to testify? The proposal deck Rivera prepared showed two roads forward. Repaint and pay quietly. Challenge collateral and expose the loan. Quiet path versus hurricane path. Why did every polite option feel like surrender? Then Clara whispered another secret at dusk by the swing. My cousin works on the demolition crew. Viva asked them to arrive before any vote. Arrive early like thieves wearing hard hats. Have you noticed how truth travels through relatives? I told Rivera that dusk detail changed everything. Everything shifted from civil dispute to fraud landscape. And fraud is the word even HOAs can't beige-wash. The loons went silent that night. Silent like the bank thread tightening. Have you ever felt a system realize it's standing on air? Part 4 ends where fraud begins. And the next act would drag media, bank, and legacy owners into one courtroom boat. I used to believe demolition had a reverse gear. Turns out it's called a courtroom. Have you noticed how HOAs shrink the moment a judge enters the room? Rivera filed the fraud complaint on a Monday that felt sharpened. Not engineered sharp, knife sharp. Clara agreed to testify though she looked terrified of her own driveway. Why do good people fear clipboards more than oaths? Mirror Lake Estates held an emergency board meeting the same week. Vivica labeled it Unity Session. Unity while my boathouse ribs lay in a dumpster. Have you ever heard hypocrisy sound like folding chairs? I parked outside headquarters filming members arriving in cross-armed clouds. Mr. Hale brought donuts this time instead of calculators. Why did sugar suddenly replace purple ink? Rivera coached me on vocabulary for this HOA niche stage. Say fraud, not violation. Say people, not legacy properties. But why did rehearsed truth still shake in my throat? The first media reporter, Jenna Marks, called asking for a walk-through. Local channel hungry for HOA horror meat. She said viewers love David vs. Board stories. Have you noticed how pain becomes content currency? I walked her along the demolition scar wearing Dutch's old flannel. Cedar ghosts in the air. I explained how the HOA borrowed $2.4 million against dirt they never owned. How Vivica commissioned unsafe assessments, like hit songs. But why did the lake stay calm while I talked? Vivica's attorney sent threats wrapped in legal bows. Defamation suits, cease and desist lullabies. Have you ever been rocked by letters that promised to sue you for breathing? Rivera discovered the bank had already questioned collateral after Benton spoke. Questioned but not acted yet. Why do institutions move slower than bulldozers? Clara met me at dusk again by the tire swing. She handed a USB drive trembling like a live wire. Inside, text from Vivica to the developer and demolition foreman. Make it quick, before he paints hearts everywhere. Have you noticed how tyrants text without filters? Those messages turned the hoodie engineer into a very confrontational guy. I started calling grown kids nightly though they lived opposite coasts. You can't outsource grief, but you can import courage. Why did fatherhood suddenly feel like scaffolding? The board meeting ended with Hale proposing to pause all actions. Vivica voted no with that shark smile glued back on. Glued confidence can peel. Have you ever watched power argue with arithmetic? Rivera prepared subpoenas for 3 families including the exiled Reagans. Clara warned me members might turn hostile when dues explode. Explode, another engineered verb entering my life. But why did I feel safer than I had in years? Jenna's first segment aired showing Vivica sipping champagne beside machines. Comment sections filled with other HOA survivors across states. Have you noticed how one story becomes a choir? Members began emailing me privately asking about liability. About whether their beige dream carried a hidden mortgage. Why did strangers suddenly treat me like Lighthouse? Vivica scheduled the celebration hearing, anyway, though fraud clouds thickened. Rivera said timing was nearly perfect for hurricane path. Nearly perfect still isn't perfect. Have you noticed how micro cliffhangers arrive in human voices now? Then Benton from the credit union left a voicemail at 11 p.m. Mr. Cordell, the bank intends to call the loan unless ownership clarified within 14 days. Clarified, the polite cousin of detonated. Have you ever heard a system begin counting backward? Part 5 ends with a ticking gatehouse and a USB full of truth. The next reveal would force members to choose between Viva and their own signatures. 14 days can sound gentle on paper. In real life it growls. Have you noticed how HOA timelines feel like hourglasses filled with teeth? Benton's voicemail turned the gatehouse into a ticking metronome. Steel frame half finished, contractors already paid from that phantom loan. Why build a fortress on air and call it investment? Rivera organized a member briefing at the Mirror Lake Diner. Greasy spoons, honest mugs. Lillian would have loved the blueberry pie smell. Clara brought the exiled Reagan couple driving 40 minutes just to sit with me. Have you ever met neighbors your board tried to delete? Mr. Hale arrived looking smaller than his calculator. He asked to see the USB messages again. Again and again his face rehearsed disbelief. But why did the board never question the president's private assessments? The Reagans told Jenna Marks their foreclosure story for the second segment. 3 kids, 1 dog, purple ink exile over $900. Have you noticed how a fine becomes a biography? Rivera explained joint liability out loud this time. $2.4 million divided by 47 families equals a second mortgage no one ordered. Micro math punching polite masks off. Why did forks stop clinking when he said fraud? Vivica scheduled a walkthrough with the bank attorney pretending cooperation. Pretending like champagne never touched my driveway. Have you ever watched a tyrant audition for innocence? I kept filming the lake at dawn to survive the tension. Loons returned, therapy swing still creaking though demolition scar watched us. Why does calm scenery make villains louder? Members began arguing in email chains I was CC'd on. Some blamed Dutch for joining in 2018. Blamed a 90-year-old veteran instead of the spray-tan president. Have you noticed how systems hunt dead witnesses first? Rivera discovered the developer lease explicitly forbade using the parcel as collateral. One single sentence sharper than any dozer blade. Why did the bank ignore that blueprint prohibition? Clara whispered that Vivica had personal credit cards tied to HOA expenses. Tied like barnacles on a sinking boat. Have you ever learned power sometimes signs its own confession? Jenna called saying national outlets were circling this HOA niche storm. They wanted a David who owned dirt under beige identicals. Why did my private grief become public gravity? The bank walkthrough ended with ownership officially confirmed in my name. Confirmed, and Benton initiated the loan call notice. Have you noticed how arithmetic finally knocked on headquarters' door? Vivica's attorney begged Rivera for settlement talks. Begged, the first honest verb from their side. Why did surrender suddenly wear a suit? Rivera told members 2 paths remained. Expose fully and dissolve the HOA, or refinance with new elections. Elections another cliff edge approaching. Have you noticed how communities wake only when wallets scream? Part 6 ends with the loan officially called and a president begging for perfumes to hide it. The final act would reveal who really pays for $300 cruelty. I finally understood what Dutch meant about the lake taking care of me. Care can arrive wearing uncomfortable truth. Have you noticed how endings start the moment a tyrant loses an audience? The credit union called the loan at 8 a.m. sharp. Gatehouse contractors froze like statues in mid-hammer. Fortress on air officially bankrupt. Why did Confidence evacuate headquarters overnight? Mirror Lake Estates held new elections under court supervision. Clara drove me there with Reagan couple sitting brave in the back seat. Have you ever watched a neighborhood vote like it's choosing oxygen? Vivica didn't run this time. She looked spray-tanned but rain-eyed, champagne replaced by bottled water. Hale read the liability notice out loud, $2.4 million ghost debt. Have you noticed how arithmetic becomes a preacher? Members voted to dissolve the HOA entirely. Entire system melting like beige candle wax. Why did people suddenly apologize to a hoodie engineer? Rivera helped restore the parcels into a cooperative without joint liability. Legacy owners free to keep forest green hearts. The Reagans moved back after Benton arranged compensation from the developer. Have you ever seen Exile reverse its biography? Jenna Marks filmed the final segment at dusk by the tire swing. Loons calling again, calm scenery learning to breathe. I explained I never wanted revenge, just integrity engineered properly. But why did justice feel like restoration dust turning into light? Dutch's pencil maps hang on my wall now. M+L heart still safe in the rebuilt door frame Rivera forced them to replace. Have you noticed how homes can resurrect when systems red? This story for the HOA niche viewers ends with one twist. I do own the dirt under the neighborhood road. And I leased it back to them for $1 a year, exactly like Dutch planned. $1 holding up a kinder future. Have you ever learned an ancestor wrote the ending before you were fined? Standards should protect beauty, not crush it. Grief taught me survival. Dutch taught me reading. And Lillian taught me hearts deserve more stable math than any binder. If you're living your own HOA horror, drop your state below and read every signature you inherit KY. Because systems fear two things: bad PR and owners who continue the story themselves.